Hello, and welcome to Real Person Reviews. I'm Sam, and I'm a real person. And today I want to talk to you about Pokemon Yellow. And I guess some things up front for this one. Pokemon Yellow is a Game Boy game, and I did have the original before. But since I already reviewed Pokemon Blue, for one thing, you should check that out, either the video or the written one. Or, just, like, if you already know about, Pokemon Red and Blue, then you're probably fine. And for some reason don't know about Yellow, I guess there's this review to talk about. But, what I'm actually playing is what I'm playing is the 3DS Virtual Console version of it. And so there are a few different things to mention with that one, I guess. And so I'm hoping this will kind of be interesting enough to cover both the game itself as sort of an update to Red and Blue, as well as the Virtual Console version, just to give it a little more meat to the bones here, so it's not just like, hey, it's the same game. Try to get more into that. Also, that's why the footage is going to be from the 3DS, and the 3DS plays it as if it's on like a Game Boy Color or something, so that's why there's a bunch of color to it, and why it looks like it does. But I just wanted you to know that I have, I have experience with the original. I played that a lot of times, so I'm trying to give you a decent enough perspective with enough information to make this worth your while, and make this not like a 3-minute video. Instead, it would probably take me 10 minutes just to make a 3-minute video, because I ramble like a motherfucker. Also, if you want to see a written review, you can check that out before, after, or instead of the video review. I'll link that in the description. And I think we can just jump right into this fucking thing. Also, I can't hold the game up at the end or whatever, because it's a digital copy, so it wouldn't work. I would just be holding up my 3DS. Now it looks stupid. So Pokemon Yellow is another Gen 1 game. It's actually officially called Pokemon Yellow, or I think it's called Pokemon Yellow Version Special Pikachu Edition, which is a mouthful. Everybody just calls it Pokemon Yellow, but I think that's the official name of it. And it's the same plot of, you start off whatever, and like you're a kid who wants to become Pokemon Master. You wanna be the Pokemon League champion. So the game has you doing the same gameplay, catching Pokemon, leveling up, battling these gyms to get the badges, and trying to beat the Elite Four, become Pokemon League champion, and all of the stuff in between. It's the basically same gym leaders, a lot of the same trainers and locations of things, and Pokemon and moves, and most of it, generally about 90 to 95% of the game or something like that, is all the same game. But there are some changes here for this version. So for one thing, you start off and you only get Pikachu for a starter. That's why it's the special Pikachu edition. Kind of like in the show, when Ash doesn't really have a choice of what Pokemon he has, he's kind of gets stuck with a Pikachu. And so do you. And Pikachu, just like the show as well, will follow you behind you because it doesn't like being in the ball. You can also turn around and talk to it and kind of gauge how happy it is with you and how much it loves you, all that stuff. Just kind of by these little short clips of Pikachu looking at you. And also it says Pikachu, which is another slight change. It says his own name when it comes out, rather than just a generic noise Pokemon cry. It's actually says Pikachu. So that's another unique thing from here. But that mechanic, there's actually a bit of a mechanic to it where you can actually make Pikachu happier if you win battles and heal it and give it items and stuff. It gets more displeased with you if you instead are losing battles and putting it in the box. And that's being the only time that Pikachu is gone, is if you put it in the box or it faints, then it's no longer walking behind you. Or I think if you go on a bike, it disappears too. So there's that. Most of the gym leaders have their Pokemon adjusted to be more like the show. And so, like, a lot of them just have slightly different teams. Their visual designs are also made to look more like the show. All of the Pokemon are also made to look more like the show, and just the standard art for the series going forward. They just look more accurate into what you're used to seeing. I think there have been some various bug fixes I don't know about, all the little details, but there have been some. Like, I think they're missing no glitch out of there, so you can't do that here. I think there's some other slight, like, ones that I don't really notice as much. What else? They've added in, I also mentioned they've lowered some of the, like, a lot of the levels of the trainers and gym leaders and stuff, because to try and adjust for the fact that you have to start with a Pikachu. Though you can get the other 3 starters from the other 2 games. You can get those throughout the journey, just like Ash does. There are ways to get them. So you can have all of those in this one. But there are still version exclusives, where there are certain Pokemon you can't get here. And I guess really they're more like version exclusions at this point. There's certain Pokemon you can't get here, so you still need to trade with Red or Blue in order to get all of the Pokemon. What else was there? It's a lot of very minor things like that. They've added in Team Rocket, I guess. Jesse and James of Team Rocket is another one where they've added them in, and they show up in a few locations to battle with you. So there's that. Again, more like the show. A lot of this was done, I believe, to have it tie into the show more, I think it came out after the show had hit. So that's the main gist of the things. Also, they've added in something for the 3DS version. I mean, there's a few things, I guess. One of the things they added in was the ability to play the minigame Pikachu's Beach, where basically there's just these waves that act like ramps, and you're on a surfboard. Your Pikachu is on a surfboard, and it goes off these ramps and then jumps into the air. And then you can hit left or right to tilt it around and spin it and try to do tricks in the air. And then you have to stick the landing to get some points. And it's just basically a little mini game to get you get like a high score. I don't believe you actually get anything for doing the mini game. It's just there as a little aside you can do. And normally you would have to get a surfing Pikachu from some other means, like in events, I think, or like certain other games or something, and trade it onto there. But because the functionality of the 3DS one can't really do that, they just made it so your starter Pikachu can play this mini game. And this is the beach that's like south of Fuchsia City. It's in the house there. So there's been that change. Another is that they've changed a lot of the visual effects of the attacks. Like, there's a lot of attacks that have flashing, and so they made it not do a harsh, completely black, like flashing, black and white stuff like that, and made it more of like a gray, like a duller gray. So it will, to lessen the seizures, I guess, chance of seizures. There's also some attacks, or some effects where your characters wiggle around really quickly, and I guess that's kind of like flashing. That may have been part of the problem, so they've sort of blurred those a bit as well. A big change to that is that they've made it so that Jinx has purple skin instead of black skin. I guess they were afraid of being offensive or racist or something. It was a thing that they had later changed for other games, but originally it wasn't like this, and then they retroactively went back for this version and changed Jinx, so probably to avoid a kerfuffle of sorts. Also, because of the way this one is, they think they try to make it a little more authentic to the original experience here. So, for one thing, battling and trading, there's not online for it or anything. Instead, you still have to use basically the local wireless to do battling and trading with other people who have the 3DS versions of one of these 3 games, Red, Blue, or Yellow, and I think they did it with the red and blue versions for this too, on 3DS. But also, because there's no link cable for the 3DS, and also there's no suspend points or restore points. So if you want to stop your game, you have to save it and quit it. There's no restore point for you to go back and try a thing over again, and there's no suspend point for you to just like, shut the game off, then turn it back on, and be exactly there again. Not entirely sure why they did that. I can only imagine it's just to make it more authentic, I suppose. And I actually think that's all of the things I wanted to hit for all of the little changes. There's probably a bunch more that I didn't mention, but they're probably so small, who knows if you'll even notice, right? Alright. And the game is good, okay? It is a pretty good game. I really like that Pokemon Yellow adds all these elements from the show, because I remember watching the show, and I guess that's largely fueled by nostalgia, because, I don't know, I watched the show, I was really into Pokemon at the time, and it was kind of special for me. Gen 1 of Pokemon was sort of a time when, one of the few times I've ever felt like I've, fit in with everybody, and, so I guess I do have some fond feelings towards this. And it just makes me more nostalgic when I can do this, and it's it reminds me of, the stuff that happened in the show, too. I like that. I also think it's cool that now, the addition of Jesse and James from Team Rocket, it's they're following you around, and it's more ways to really, feel like you're kind of growing and advancing. Where it's Gary's Pokemon are getting stronger, and Giovanni's Pokemon are getting stronger, and Team Rocket's Pokemon now also are getting stronger. And that's cool. So I have to fight off against these people multiple times and see them grow and see how much I've grown also. And it's just kind of a fun way to kind of keep you invested and try to keep doing well, rather than fighting a bunch of faceless, people, or fighting more significant people just, but once. And I think the lower difficulty makes some sense, I guess, because you're stuck with Pikachu as a starter. So early on, it's going to be a bit rougher, as you have to kind of deal with that every single time. It's kind of neat that Pikachu follows you around, too. It just feels a little friendlier. You can turn around and talk to your Pikachu, and it feels like you're on this adventure with somebody rather than just running around, by yourself. That's kind of a nice little touch, I suppose. Nothing big, it's not real game-changing, but it's just kind of a nice little thing to have there. And I do like that they have added in the ability to play Pikachu's Beach. That's kind of a fun little thing that you can do. I like that 3DS one, it's cheap, and it doesn't take up as much space, and they don't have to worry about, you just always have it on your 3DS at all times without having to have a cartridge in there or something. You don't have to worry about the battery dying and not holding your saves anymore. I don't know. There's some conveniences to that. I like that they still tried to kind of stay authentic for the most part for that, too, where it's there's no, online components. You just kind of have to use the wireless thing instead of getting some kind of cable for it. I don't know. Also, I think I may have mentioned this, but in general, the updated art also is great, because even if it's not you didn't watch the show necessarily, but you've played later games, it's probably nice to see Pokemon look more resemble what they're supposed to fucking look like, I guess, is sort of the point. Fortunately, I think there are kind of a lot of downsides to this one, too, in the sense of, if you've already played Red and or Blue, Yellow isn't going to be all that much different. It's still mostly the same game. And like those other ones, if you've played later Pokemon games, they might seem a bit primitive. It didn't really update a whole lot. It just changed a few things and tried to clean it up a bit. There are still glitches in it. There are still errors, and there's still stuff that isn't in line with general Pokemon stuff that, since then has been pretty standardized. It was still kind of before that. So it is a bit of a victim of its age at this point, and it might be harder to get into if you're into the later Pokemon stuff and don't have nostalgia for Gen 1. And, it just wasn't that big of a jump is the main thing. I also think that, it's kind of annoying that it turned version exclusives into version exclusions, where it's now it's not I can only get these Pokemon in Blue, and I can only get these Pokemon in Red. This third one now, it's Now these are the Pokemon that I can't get in this one, but I can get in these other two. So they're not exclusives anymore, they're just exclusions. Which kind of sucks, and it feels kind of cheap. And I really wish that Pokemon Yellow would have just had all the Pokemon in it. Which, I understand why it doesn't do that. It would ruin some of the experience they were trying to build, and it would make them less money. But I think it would have been a cool thing to have in case, maybe some forward thinking of like later in the future, when people, don't have these games to play around anymore, or they're not playing the same cartridges anymore, or like you have your old cartridge and you have no one to play with. Maybe at the time you didn't have anyone to play with. It would have been nice to be able to just get all the stuff and be able to experience the thing they wanted you to experience, right? I don't know. And they waited to put it out anyway, so they would have already made their money on the other crap by the time it was out. I don't know, that would have been nice. The 3DS one, I think, bugs me a little bit, just because of, it decided to change some things, but other things it didn't change just to be authentic, and they sort of did a thing of like, they just had to pick and choose what was important to change and what was important to keep the same, and that kind of bothered me. I wanted them to really just commit, damn it, where it was like, I think it's fine that they tried to make it, reduce the seizures, whatever. They changed some of the visual effects. That kind of sucks, but I understand why they did it. It's like a safety thing. Changing Jinx, they could have made her a darker purple at least, so it looked more like the original Jinx design. It didn't have to be black, because you don't want to be offensive or racist or whatever reason you switched it. Fine, but you could have left it like a darker shade, because it looks just too light and it just looks like kind of weird. Like it's not a Jinx, but I mean, I don't know. It's weird. It's just me. It doesn't really change much of anything. It doesn't really bother me, I guess. But it also is a weird thing they would do that. But they won't put in online, which I think would have been excellent for trading and battling. Just put in the online component. I would have been definitely okay with that, because there's no cable anyways for that authenticity, for that experience. So why do I have to be in a proximity to someone to do those things, other than they want to push you to try and be social with people like that? I don't know. It's silly. Just put online on it. I think that would have been fine. I don't really care about restore points and suspend points, but why do they not have them? Just to be authentic. It makes it less, not even super necessary, but it makes it less accessible, I guess, in that sense, compared to other 3DS Virtual Console games. Yet they didn't decide to change any of the error messages, and it's not even a thing of like reprogramming much. It's just like, change it so that the messages read properly with the type effectiveness. So it's not like, oh, this thing is not very effective, says it's super effective, or it's something that's neutrally effective says it's not very effective, or some shit. It's like, fix those messages. Why not fix that stuff? But no, if you have fucking palette swap Jinx, I'm glad we did that, instead of actually fixing something that was, like, wrong with the game. Fuck forbid. Certain things are important to keep the same, and certain things just aren't, I guess. And yeah, I really just wish they would have committed on that. Overall, I think Pokemon Yellow is good. I mean, it's a good game. If you like Pokemon Red and Pokemon Blue, you're gonna like Pokemon Yellow. If you never played a Gen 1 Pokemon game, especially if you've seen the show, I would recommend Pokemon Yellow. I can't say that it's a super great way to get into Pokemon necessarily, as they've gotten a lot more convenient and streamlined and polished since then. Still rough around the edges, and a lot of stuff changed since Gen 1. But it's great for seeing Pokemon Origins. Obviously, if you have Red and Blue, if you're a collector, you're going to want to probably grab this anyways. You already have Red and Blue. It's like fucking, you have basically the same game anyways. This is more different than, having Red and then getting Blue, or vice versa, So, I don't know. And I think it's especially if you've seen the show, and the old show, and you wanted to have a game that's more like that, I think it's probably the one of the three you'd want to get just for that purpose. Great way to see actual Pokemon's like origins, like where it started. I don't know. Maybe worth, I'd say maybe $20 to $25. I would say, I don't know how much it really goes for, but that's how much I'd say it's worth. It's a fun game. There's a lot of stuff to do. It's just a little primitive for some people. A better representation than the Game Boy Advance remakes of Gen 1, a better representation of what it was actually like, But if you just wanted the story and like, you know, to see the region and some of the stuff, but you want the more polished Pokemon experience, those remakes might be better for you, I suppose. I could see that if you don't have nostalgia, you don't care about the actual beginnings of it, that's fine. If you just want the story and atmosphere and that stuff, I can see that. If you're someone who's serious about it, a big Pokemon fan, you're going to want to have all of them anyway. I do think Pokemon Yellow is maybe worth about $30 physical. But 3DS version, I would say, is definitely worth getting. Then you can play all these Pokemon games, at least some iteration of every generation of Pokemon on your 3DS. It's only $10. You don't have to worry about the saves. Like I said, you know it's going to save. You don't have to worry about the battery dying on you, and it's always on your 3DS. It's like such a small file size that you can just have it on there and then play it whenever you want to, and it's just a thing you'll always just have there. It's a nice backup to have because, again, it's not real expensive. It's just $10, and it's more expensive than other Game Boy Color games on there and other Game Boy games, but it's still worth the $10. Definitely, even if it does seem overpriced for where it is, because it's Pokemon, it's $10. It's still a good deal for what you're getting, I guess is the point. And even though some of those changes are a little frustrating, I don't think any of the changes ruin the experience or the game overall. It's especially if you're just thinking you want to check out the origins of Pokemon, and you're thinking like, well, I don't know if I really want to spend that much on the actual thing if I don't end up really liking it, you know, that much because I've just played newer Pokemon stuff. Then get one of the 3DS ports of Red, Blue, or Yellow. I would lean towards Yellow because it has nice colors and everything too. But it doesn't really, you know, it's like $10 just to check it out. I think that's a pretty reasonable risk to do, I suppose. I think that's everything for Pokemon Yellow. What did you guys think? How do you think Pokemon Yellow stacks up against Red and Blue and against Fire Red and Leaf Green? Would you recommend the real deal or the 3DS version? You know, what do you think of the 3DS Virtual Console version? What do you think of the game? Anything else? Just leave that stuff in the comments. You know, it'd be fun. Have a conversation. I don't know. It's Pokemon Yellow, man. I just wanted to use this as an excuse to play it again, honestly, because like I already did Blue, and it's like, well, I mean, I guess Yellow is somewhat different, and it's on 3DS now, so I can talk about two things and stretch a video that should have been 5 minutes into one that's like 20. That's what a real person like me does. I'm Sam, I'm bad at improv. It should have been a good ending, and there's not one. I don't know. I'm hungry, so I'm gonna get some food. Do the comments and the likes or dislikes and the subscribes or unsubscribes, shares. There's not really an unshares. There's not a way to unshare, I guess, but do whatever you want to do. Hopefully it's been cool. Also, I beat Pokemon Yellow with an all-grass team. Pretty hard to use just all-grass types the whole time. Very hard. Not recommended. But hey, that's another thing under my belt. Because I am hardcore. And